And now for something a little different. We are obviously going at 10 times speed, and I'm doing the voiceover afterwards. Right now, I'm just editing the shot object a bit, and pulling it out of the old framework that I had before. This has the advantage, well, doing the video this way has the advantage that I don't have to type and think and program all at the same time. Like, yes I do, I just don't have to talk while I'm doing it. Okay, so now we're adding a bit of code for the player to actually be able to fire the new shot we've defined, and adding a refire rate so that they can't fire one per frame. Tying it into the input code, adding a couple helper functions, and making it so that shots die when they get too old. We have a list of dead objects that gets updated that gets altered when an object dies, and then at the end of the frame hey, it works. At the end of each tick, we remove all those dead objects from the active object list. We don't do it in time with everything, because otherwise we might remove an object and then try to change it, and because there is no real set evaluation order. So doing it that way makes life a little bit less crazy. Now, shots aren't actually getting removed because we aren't actually doing this yet, and so we're adding the code for it now. So remove all the dead objects from the living object list, and then call all the die methods on them. And then we have to actually create die methods for it so that it works right. And it appears to work right. The downside to going at uber speed is that you can't actually see what the effect on the game is very well. But now we're adding missiles, just because basically for something to do. They won't actually behave very different from shots. But the main thing is that they will accelerate instead of just moving at a constant speed right here. So for every new object we create, we're going to be adding a calculate and a draw method and possibly a die method. The die method is at least going to have to remove the object from the game state. Wait, no, that happens outside of it. So now we define a fire missile function, which is a lot like a fire player function, but the fire shot function, but the player has a limited number of missiles. Uses the same refire timing though. We actually have to draw the missiles, which I left till last because drawing things in raw OpenGL is a bit of a pain. But so for now we're just going to... It actually doesn't work, which is the fault of the drawing function, so like I said, it's a pain. So we make it a bit simpler, it works, and then we play around with it for a little bit until we find something that doesn't look completely like ass. And we eventually end up with little sort of pie slice shapes, which are nearly indistinguishable from triangles, but are good enough for now. So now that we have shots and missiles, we need explosions. Of course, it wouldn't be a game without explosions, would it? So we're going to create an explosion type and trigger it at the end of in the dying method for a shot or missile. And I wish you could see what was going on here, because on a whim I added a slight wobbliness to the missile path, which looks really, really cool, and which I will post a video showing you later. You can see a bit of me playing around with it there. But back to explosions. Explosions we're just going to make as expanding rings that vanish after a bit. And we could make them change color, but we don't, because that's yet another irritating thing to program. Drawing is a pain in the butt no matter how you do it. Either you have to actually be an artist, and not only be an artist, but one capable of making sprites and animations look good, or you have to spend a hell of a lot of time programming it. So either way, drawing is difficult. Making games look good is difficult. Kudos to all those artists out there, because I know some artists and I know how difficult, time-consuming, and ridiculously terrible it is. So now we make the shot and the missile spawn an explosion when they die, and of course it doesn't work. So we do a bit of debugging, and then we track down a few errors in our death code. And it actually creates explosions now, but the explosions stay there and don't go away. So this is where I sit and I stare at the screen for 5 minutes until they do. Put in a bunch of print statements in the code to try to find out what exactly is going on. And everything looks like it's working now. Fine in the calculate explosion function, in the death function, the drawing function. But it still doesn't actually remove explosions. The die function's getting called, but it's generally being a pain. And we discover that in the function that's actually supposed to remove dead objects from the game, that isn't happening. And the explosions also look like ass because the size, they're expanding rings, and the size is only updated once per frame, which is rare enough that it is distinctly visible, and so we do some interpolation and make them grow more. Do an interpolation on the size of the explosion growing as well. And then we define a gate which is going to do nothing but sit there and rotate slowly and look kind of cool. And it will have a game function later, but right now objects can't collide and thus can't really interact with each other. So right now these are basically placeholders. And we have to actually add it to the game state when we create it as well. And there it is. And you can't see it right now, but it's rotating way too fast, so we tone it down a bit. It was supposed to be white, but I actually forgot to add the third color term, so it's yellow. But I decided I like it that way. And then we make clouds, which, much like gates, are going to sit there doing nothing, but will eventually slow down the player when you drive through them, when you're actually capable of colliding with them, and so on. And there they are. And it's about this time that I decide that my wrists hurt and I'm going to stop. So